Welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. My name is Dirk-Jan Hupkes, and on this podcast I give the women who work in tech the platform they need to inspire and empower each other. Join me on a journey into the world of entrepreneurship, funding, biases and role models to discover the strategies for success in the tech industry. In other words, how women can disrupt tech. Are you ready to listen? Hey, welcome back to Women Disrupting Tech, and thank you for tuning in to episode 124. Investors like to believe that they're rational, like data driven, objective, but are they really? Especially in venture capital, where investors often have very little to go on, they invest in people who feel familiar and they back products they can imagine buying themselves. For the rest, bias fills the gap. Bias is unbreakable unless we change the system. And my guest today understands how to do that. Anieke Lamers is a venture partner at Borski Fund, a Dutch VC that invests in female founded and gender diverse tech companies. Before becoming an investor at Borski Fund, Anieke was a founder herself, and that experience gives her a rare perspective on how the system really works and how it needs to change. Here are some highlights from our conversation. First, trust is built on similarity, and that's where bias begins. Bias itself isn't bad, it's human, but it needs awareness. Second, impact founders often burn out because they carry their mission like Atlas carries the world, and they may need a different kind of support. Third, it's crucial for founders to understand the fund's vintage. It can make the difference between having time to execute your mission and being pushed into a short term exit. Plus, when you're an aspiring founder, you'll hear why having a business baby shower might just be the perfect way to celebrate your next launch. So, when you're ready to listen and learn how Anieke Lamers closes the inequality gap by backing female founders with Borski Fund, please welcome to Women Disrupting Tech, Anieke Lamers. Anieke Lamers, welcome to Women Disrupting Tech. It's an honor to have you. You're the operating partner at Borski Fund. Tell us how you got into to that position and what happened before and what it is like now.
Yeah, super excited and honored to be here talking with you today, Dirk-Jan. I have had a long journey to get to where I am now. I started my career in finance and venture capital. So actually, I did work in VC for quite a long time for an impact fund, a corporate venture capital fund, for a bank. And then I decided around my 30s to take the leap of faith and just go and build my own startup out of thin air.
Yeah.
And that was a really great learning experience. It was a lot of fun to build. Did not turn into the great success that I had envisioned. However, it did help me to be, I think, a much more well rounded VC now that I'm back in VC. So yeah, I think for me it feels a bit full circle because a long time ago in 2012, I started a network for female professionals. It was called the Old Girls Network. The idea of it
Yeah.
was to help women because research showed that a lot of women who are at the top of organizations were having trouble to help their younger women get ahead because they felt they had to work really hard for it themselves. So that these younger women also have to do it by themselves. So we wanted to change that. And I remember back then I was like an early 20-year-old girl, and I got to meet all these incredible older, more professional and experienced women. And two of them were Laura and Simone, who actually founded Borski Fund. And like, what is it? More than 12 years later, I'm having a coffee with them, and they sort of ambushed me to come back into VC. So it feels a little bit like a full circle moment in that sense, where I'm at now.
Okay. And for context, what does operating partner mean?
Yeah, good question. It's a term that comes from private equity, and it's typically people who have operating experience who can help portfolio companies of a fund, but also the fund itself with a certain expertise. Within Borski Fund, I'm not sure if all the listeners are aware, but Borski Fund invests in female founders and diverse teams across Europe from seed to Series A. And those are typically companies within the health space, within the circular space, and what we call future society. So it's a lot of different type of topics, but my expertise within the fund is mostly deal sourcing and deal flow. I also help a few of the portfolio companies, and I also do some fundraising. So it's quite broad, actually, what I'm doing now within the fund.
Yeah, that's indeed quite broad. It's almost a full spectrum. Uh, yeah.
Indeed, yeah.
So, if I understand it correctly, what you do in terms of deal sourcing is that you are the person who actually selects, listens to pitches, etc.
Correct. I source deals from events that I go to. By the way, I don't live in the Netherlands. I live in Portugal, so I am abroad a lot, and that also helps with, I guess, getting a broader network of talent in, but also getting international investors to know about Borski Fund, and of course also the founders themselves, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, super
Okay.
exciting.
I want to plug into three things you said. First, you had this old girls network, probably named after the old boys network. Uh, um, and what I heard you say is that older women at the time found it difficult to support younger versions of themselves.
Mhm.
Can you double click on that? Can you tell us a bit more about how they found it difficult and why they found it difficult? Because I see that still, and it still surprises me a lot.
Yeah. Um, I have to say that I don't personally relate to them that much because I love helping younger versions of me and younger people in general. And I think Adriana Huffington has a beautiful quote about this. It's that there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. That's a bit bold, but I guess if we feel that, like from a psychological point of view, that we have gone through certain things that made us tough or made us hard, that we feel that was good for us because we became better from that. And that we feel that the people who follow us, that after us, they also need to go through that because that was good for me. That's how I got shaped. So
Huh?
almost like in sororities and fraternities, you also have this hierarchical thing where they sort of haze the younger ones. Maybe it's from this perspective, whereas I feel it doesn't need to be that way, especially because men are maybe a little bit more like used to asking for help and quick to get an intro by a buddy or a friend who intros them through a dad or an uncle. Yeah, women need to do that more for each other still. This was 12 years ago, and it still is sometimes an issue indeed.
Yeah, and the second thing I want to double down on is so you've been on both sides of the table, of the
Mhm.
investment table, both as a VC early, then as a founder, and now
Mhm.
again as a VC.
Yeah.
So how does that shape how you look at founders today? How does that play into how you look at pitches, for instance, or how does that play into how you help founders?
Yeah, I think what was blatantly obvious for me when I was a founder and pitching to investors, um, how I, as a quite junior analyst investor before that, was also asking some questions to companies as if I, as a VC, have more knowledge or more information, or I know it better because I see more of the market, almost putting yourself above the founder. Whereas having gone through the founder journey, I mean, as a founder, you breathe your company. It goes under your skin. It is all you think about day and night, in the weekends and holidays. It doesn't matter. And to think that then a VC in 1/2 hour meeting can sort of ask that one question that you haven't thought about, that is so arrogant,
Yeah.
So I think it changed me a lot by respecting founders even more. Like, I already had fascination and admiration, I think, for founders before I was a founder myself. But I am very sure that any question that I can ask in a meeting is something that they have already thought about, not once, not twice, but maybe 100 times. And maybe they've gotten that question as well. So I don't pretend to know more about their business or their company than they know themselves. So I think VCs and founders should be treated equal. If anything, VCs should be putting founders more on a pedestal, because they are ultimately the people who are building the companies and who are
And
doing the
bringing in their money.
and bringing in their money, indeed,
Yeah.
making them get more returns.
Yeah. So let's for a moment shift to the startup that you were building. Um, I believe it was called Peekabond, but can you tell us a bit more about what that was, how it started, and how you what you built in the end?
Yeah, it started as something that came really from the heart, because my sister, she lives in Australia. She has now two young daughters, and I found it extremely hard to not be close by them in order to be the aunt that I wanted to be in my sister's children's lives.
Uh-huh.
And I saw that grief also in the eyes of my parents, who were first time grandparents back then around COVID time. So they weren't even able to easily visit Australia. So I wanted to build a tool that sort of helps families with young children to connect across distances in a
Hmm.
safe way. And the first thing I thought of was like a little cuddly plush bear, like a Teletubby thing with a sort of a screen in the tummy where you could sort of directly communicate with the kids. That was I made like a prototype on a drawing of it, and yeah, I after a few weeks already knew that this is never going to work, because I don't know anything about hardware. I knew from my VC background that that's a working capital nightmare as well. So I already made a kind of quick pivot to a SaaS, like an online app. Um, and I was very much, let's say, attached to the outcome of that company, because I was so personally involved and invested with it. And I think that made it also very hard to be emotionally detached and to be more, let's say, having this experimenting mindset where you try a lot of different things, because it really felt like, oh, this is my baby, I don't want it to fail. And yeah, that sort of, I don't think, was in hindsight the best approach, because I know that yeah, if you experiment without feeling any ego or without feeling any attachment to the outcome, I think you'll get a way higher chance of success. And that's something that I learned. And in the end,
Yeah, but
Peekabond,
that's
yeah,
sort of hard though, I think, to approach if it's your baby.
Yeah.
which for many startup founders, you included, and
Yeah.
probably if I would be a startup founder, me included as well. It's something you're so emotionally attached to that failing hurts.
Yeah, it does. Um, I once had a chat with Nalden. I don't know if you remember him, but he's the founder of WeTransfer. And
Hmm.
he was building something similar at the time when I was building Peekabond. And he was super detached to the outcome. So he was like really just building it. And if it doesn't fail, well, he said, you win some, you dim some. So he had like this super casual uh, feeling about the failing of that company. Whereas I really felt like the pressure was very high because I really wanted it to uh, succeed, not just for my own benefit and my own private situation with my family, but also for my investors. And that sort of immense responsibility, it becomes a sort of a pressure that makes you less playful and less experimenting, and I think in the end also less successful. So in that sense, the being sort of detached to the outcome is definitely um, I think a better mindset to be successful in
Yeah.
startup life.
Yeah, it's probably more productive in the end, but as I said, I can imagine it's more. It's really difficult. Do you think that's also specifically a female trait that female founders are more engaged, more deeply emotionally attached to what they're building?
Hmm. Yeah, I've seen that already. Before I worked for Borski, I worked for Rubio, an impact VC, and I noticed that if you go to any impact event, the founder ratio of female founders versus male founders is much higher. Like women just like building impactful startups much more. And what I also learned there is that if you're building an impactful startup, you tend to place your own um, how do you say benefit below the benefit of the company because you feel like you're doing it for the greater good, and this is ultimately very detrimental for the business because as a business you're super dependent on the founder's health and also mental health and the founder not getting burned out, right? So we noticed
Yeah,
back then already within Rubio that a lot of these impactful founders were burning out because they were feeling like they had to do this heavy lifting and carry the weight of the world on their shoulders because they're building something impactful, and they did it at all costs, including their own health. Yeah, I think that is 100% true what you're just saying, that women build more impactful companies, and also as a result of that, given impactful founders burn out faster than non-impact founders because they feel that they're doing it for the greater good, has some sort of yeah, not great correlation, let's put it like that.
no, no. But and how does that help you in your current role then? Because I can imagine if you know that, it also
Mhm.
helps you, let's say, coach people on how to, yeah, how to take care of their mental health, how to avoid
Yeah.
these pitfalls.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I started a passion project next to my normal work, so to say, which I call the VC coach, where I also coach venture capital investors on how to yeah, recognize this and how to yeah, make aligned decisions, not just aligned with their investors and getting a higher return on investment, but really yeah, thinking about the power that we have as VCs, the enormous amounts of money that VCs are sitting on, and it really shapes our future because we make the decisions. We know where the money will flow in the future, and that comes with a really high responsibility also for those VCs to make aligned decisions, not just with their mind, their heart, their gut, their body, but also for the planet and humanity. And yeah, I think it's really important to help VCs to be more perceptive also towards their founders and the people that they're investing in, to not just look at it from a rational point of view, like, is this a good business case? But also to be more human and to be perceptive to what founders need and how you can actually help them and coach them indeed. So
Yeah.
that is
Do
very,
you also?
very fulfilling work.
Yeah, I can imagine. Do you also coach startup founders on that, or is this a pure VC play?
My core focus is on VC investors, but I do catch some founders in the slipstream of that, because in the end, I love helping humans.
Yeah.
And in that sense, for me, making their dreams come true or making their objectives come true, it doesn't matter if it's a VC or if it's a founder. The thing is just that I do feel that VCs indirectly have way more power because they, like I said, sit on such enormous streams of money that I feel my impact can be bigger by coaching them. And there's already so many founder coaches out there. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a crowded space. Yeah, for sure. So
Hmm.
that's I understand. Um, Question that was still lingering a bit in my mind is the following. So if you're pitching, many founders sort of have the feel that they have to quote unquote perform confidently. So they have to
Hmm.
overstate projections, etc. Um, in front of investors because the investors expect the hockey stick to go in up into,
Hmm.
well, almost heaven, at least VC heaven. Let's call it that. Is there something that you do or that we can all do to change that a bit to make it
Hmm.
more? Because I think going back to our previous discussion, part of that pressure comes from the expectation that there is this hockey stick.
Hmm. Yeah.
And so if you take down the expectation a bit, you also give room, let's say as an investor, but also give room to yourself as a founder to, let's say, not push yourself to the limit. But I was
Yeah.
wondering how you look at that.
I think your question is really like, should we change the system or should we change like the female founders, right? So
Uh,
I think it's probably a little bit of both because I mean, how I approach female founders is already, I think, a little bit different compared to many other VC investors because I notice when I first open a meeting that founders can be a bit like nervous, like, oh, scary
uh,
VC. And I always try to make them feel a little bit safe by just having a little bit of small talk, have a bit of chit chat, just asking them some questions to make them feel a little bit more comfortable and make them feel like we're equals. What also helps in my case, of course, is just literally saying that I've been also in their seat, in their
yeah,
shoes, as a former founder. But I think that sort of helps them to feel a little bit more comfortable. And then the second part is indeed like, how should we change as VCs, like looking at companies? Obviously, there's a certain model that VCs tend to follow, where some are, let's say, unicorn chasers, where one company needs to pay back the entire fund. And you already see a bit of a change in that some VCs are saying, no, we're not unicorn chasers. Actually, we prefer to bet on a number of horses that the fail rate is lower, but on average, it sort of gets to the return that we need to um, have our investors satisfied. And I'm sure you've heard of the term zebras, which are more like the impactful versions of the unicorns.
yeah.
um, yeah, it's good to uh, figure out who are those VCs that are not chasing unicorns but are more interested in building sustainable companies that maybe have a lower fail rate, but also maybe less extreme high returns. And they are out there. There are your
Yeah.
impact funds, some angel collectives. There's a number of them out there that are seeing that this is not healthy the way the system is built, and that we're, let's say, pushing a lot of companies over the edge, that could have been really sustainable, great companies on the longer term. But because, yeah, we are short term focused as VCs, they have to be pushed to this extreme level. And that is then sort of either up into the unicorn space or out, like dead. So, yeah, from a long term perspective, it would make sense to change that hockey stick for sure.
Yeah. And now that you mention it, also having been and still being an investor myself, not in startups, but more like normal quote unquote investments, I would think that spreading your money over different horses which have a good chance of success actually pays back a bigger fund in the end than just chasing that one unicorn which may or may not be in that portfolio.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. But VCs are often limited to their 10-year timelines, which is what investors want to invest in, and that is, yeah, creating a sort of short-term push, right? Because yeah, you need to exit those companies before a certain deadline, if you will. So there's a trend where you see more continuity funds. That means they're investing maybe past the 10-year terms.
Mhm.
There are also evergreen funds that are just they're just investing, and whenever is the right time for the company to exit, they're not pushing for an exit, but they are promising their investors a certain out. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's changing, but obviously it's changing slow.
Yeah, change is always slow. And well, let me just ask you this: Is VC also sort of old-fashioned in that sense? So also sticking to old adages?
I think VC is not an industry that's been around for a very long time, right? I think only, I don't know, 20, 30 years ago. I think there's this story that it once started with whale hunting, that they needed to finance whale hunting and sort of pooled money, and that's how VC started. It's not that old of an industry, and you do see some funds being a little bit more innovative. There's a trend in US, obviously, that funds are broadening their mandates. They are investing, for example, also in nonprofits, or they are investing more in what we call in the Netherlands MKB.
Yeah,
And
small and mid-sized.
yeah, and there's some funds that are partially investing in blockchain, Bitcoin kind of crypto things, and yeah, you see this happening, but yeah, I don't see that much innovation, if that's what you're saying. Maybe it
Yeah.
is a bit of an old-fashioned industry in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, exactly that is what I meant. Because what I've been
Hmm.
seeing is that at some point VC sort of decided, okay, this is going to be the model, and they just stick to it, and they don't get. There's it sometimes it feels like they have blinders on.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, so anyway, I wanted to move to Borski because you're
Yeah.
operating partner at Borski Fund. Um, You said that you invest in female-led companies with growth potential and in diverse teams. Two questions about that. One is why specifically,
Hmm.
because I think Borski, the name Borski, is one of the reasons why you invest in women. And
Mm-hmm.
the second question on the back of that is, how do you look at how does the selection process, what does it look like?
Yeah, well, I don't have to tell you, of course, that less than 2%, I think, of the capital goes to female founders, and less than 10%, I think, of the senior investment professionals are female. So, why we invest in gender diverse teams is because we want to reduce the gender inequality gap. I think there's a lot of money that we're missing out on. I once heard the lady from Code V say, I think it was 30 billion that we miss out on annually as a society
Huh?
through the gender inequality gap. So, from a societal perspective, a lot of innovations don't even get to see the day of light because these are, for example, femtech investments that are really hard to get funding from traditional VCs. So, I think that is a clear answer to the why. And for those listening who don't know, what does Borski stand for? It's named after Joanna Borski, who was the first female Dutch investor who bailed out the Nederlandse bank and I think a few other banks like ABN AMRO in the process as well. She inherited money from her rich husband and started investing with that. So with that example, we also want to invest alongside other female investors in female founders and in female innovation. So that's what we call our triple effect
Mhm.
thesis. Um, our selection process looks very similar to other VCs, and I always say that we don't invest in founders because they're women, but because they are the best. And by the way, they also have diverse teams because we know that diverse teams outperform non diverse teams.
Mhm.
We know that they outperform on revenue generation, so they tend to be more financially sustainable, and research also shows that they give better returns. So why are we not investing in them? It's such a weird thing if you think about it from an investment opportunity perspective. So we really see like an um, underrepresented opportunity that other investors are not spotting. And
Yeah.
I personally also think that you have to sometimes be a little bit mad or genius, or maybe a little bit of both, if you're a female founder and you're building, because it's the barriers are much higher than for their male counterparts. So yeah, at the moment, I think it's a great opportunity.
Do you see, by the way, moving needle moving in terms of female founders getting more funding over time
I wish that was
because
true.
of
Um,
the work that Borski and probably also other female VCs are doing?
it is moving, but it is moving very slow. I think less than 1% went to VC, less than 1% of VC capital went to female founders a little while ago. Now it's like less than 2%. So it's still very low, but
Yeah.
it's like 100% increase, you know?
Yeah.
So in that sense, yeah, it is moving, but it's moving slow and it's moving way too slow. I believe that without Borski in the world, even less money would flow to female founders. And that would just be detrimental. So I think it's a really great trend that other VCs are now also more conscious of this, trying to reduce their bias and also trying to invest more in female founders. But unfortunately, it's still very much needed that we are in the world. And I hope that, let's say, in 5 or 10 years, it will just be a nice to have a fund that invests in female founders, and it's just nice to have like-minded people investing in each other and having this
Hmm.
like female community. But in the end, I hope that it's just not needed anymore one day.
Yeah.
You know.
Is the goal of Borski also to make itself obsolete then over time?
Um, I would love for it to not be needed, like I said. I think for any nonprofit, the goal is to be obsolete over time, right? If you have, let's say, a war child or a Save the Children, in the end, you would want that no child is in a war zone, and that you've done a great job when that is the case, and then you can sort of say, okay, that was a great day. Let's end it now. So in the end, of course, like that would be great if we don't need to fight for female equality over time. Yeah, but if it moves as slow as it is now, we will be needed for a while as well.
So, if I'm informed correctly, you actually have a diverse team at Borski, so it's not all women doing the
That's
investment,
correct.
but also the board, etc. Do you see bias still in how you decide about investments, or has that sort of smoothened out because you're a more balanced team? Because you have
Yeah,
been a
and
VC before at
yeah.
Rubio, so
Yeah, I love that question because you would say, oh, a female gender lens fund, then obviously the bias will be lower. I guess so, but I think it is also human to be biased. Like, we are not robots. And obviously, we also know from statistics that women are more likely to invest in other women. So, in that sense, that is already also kind of like a bias, right? So,
hmm.
um,
But
we
does that assumption hold true though?
does that assumption hold true in what sense?
Well, do women actually really invest more in women?
Well, yeah, I think the research shows that women are more likely to invest in other women. So there is already that kind of bias, and that is also understandable, right? Like, if you're investing your money, you want to trust the other person, and trust is based on similarities, because if this person looks and behaves like me, then they must be a little bit like me, and I trust myself, so it makes sense to invest in them, right? So I think we definitely are also biased, like any other human being, but I think more in a positive way. And we still need to call out each other on this by creating also a psychological safe environment where we can call out each other when we see that we are biased. For example, recently we had a company that is in the makeup space, like mascaras, like,
Mascara and yeah, that
yeah,
kind of
these
stuff.
kind of
Okay.
things. And I am not a typical customer for them because I'm not really into makeup, to be honest. I'm a typical Dutch woman who just puts on always the same mascara and that's it, you know? And it's then also hard for me to sort of see the business case because I'm not the target, you know? And I
Uh,
really need to step over my own bias and sort of interview other people and how do you look at this? And, you know, these kind of things, because it is yeah, then I am also biased, right? If I'm saying, well, I wouldn't use it, so I'm not investing because I don't see the use of it, you know. So I don't know if that makes any
is
sense.
is is it difficult to make the distinction between an investable or company versus a company that you would buy from? Because essentially, that's what I'm hearing you say. I would not buy from this
Exactly.
company, therefore I will not invest in it.
100%. That's exactly right. So N is one, right? You shouldn't look at a company because you are a potential investor, because if that would happen, that's also why a lot of these femtech investments are not getting funded, because the traditional male investor doesn't want to invest in a tampon or a company that helps solve endometriosis or cervical cancer or these kind of things, because, well, that's not their problem. You know, and there's a huge market for all those things. uh,
Yeah.
yeah, just because you as a VC don't see the use because you're not experiencing the problem doesn't mean the market's not there. Yeah, look at them numbers.
Yeah. But then does that also what I'm hearing you say is that you confirm that it is difficult for investors in general to see, okay, to invest in a company that they wouldn't don't picture themselves being a customer of.
Yes, yes, and I think as an investor, we all claim to be very rational and looking at the data, but I
Uh-huh.
know for a fact that a lot of the decisions are very much gut and intuition based. And it's also good to use your, how we say in the Netherlands, a boerenverstand, so
Yeah.
your sanity, mind check, if you
Yeah.
know what I mean.
Yeah, your
But
gut feeling.
yeah, but at the same time, you need to open those blinds, like you said,
Hmm? Yeah.
those forced blinds, by looking around and asking around and not just being myopic in that sense.
Okay, and that's actually also how you dealt with this particular situation with the makeup company that you started asking other
Exactly.
people like, "Hey,
Yeah.
I'm not a
Yeah.
customer, but tell me what you think." So, out of
Exactly.
interest,
Yeah.
how many people then do you talk to? Is this just friends of you that you run into, like, "Hey, I'm looking at a company"?
Yeah, it's a number of experts that we have in our network, people who do know about this market. So we have like uh, an outer layer of Borski Fund of people with different expertises, and it's also a matter of looking at the numbers, like what are the key metrics of the company and what do they say? Because I can have an opinion, but my former co-founder always said, everybody has an opinion, or like opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one, so
Yeah.
it's not worth anything. You need to look at the data and what does the data tell you.
Mhm.
So it's a combination of talking to experts, looking at the data, and then asking around also a little bit. For my friends who I know that are into this topic, like would you use this, and how do you view this, and yeah, that's how I come to my own conclusions.
Okay, cool. Uh, So one more thing about this part. I recently spoke to Marianne Spier and Simone van Bijsterveld from Femstart. Marianne mentioned something really interesting to me, is that the only way we're going to change funding of female founders if we just flood the system with female founders. To make it so normal to have a female founder on board that it will be just a normal thing, and you can't really work around it anymore as a VC. How do you look at that?
Yeah, that's one approach. I think getting more female investors would also help. As I said, like now 10% of the senior VCs are female, so that would also help a lot. I think that would also result in changed metrics, because if you think about it from this perspective that I mentioned before, that at this point in time, for so many female founders starting a business, maybe combining that with starting a family is such a big barrier that only the crazy and the bold ones and the genius ones are doing it, and you're leaving out all the the, the normal ones, so to
Yeah,
say.
the
So
ordinary
you will
human beings.
ordinary human beings, yeah, exactly. So I think now, like I said, the statistic is definitely that female co-founded companies tend to outperform their male counterparts. If the barriers would be decreased for female founders, maybe that also will impact that statistic. But that's also fine, right? Like it would be so much better world if it would be more equal. So yeah, let's help those women start all those companies that they have always dreamed about, because I think not starting is really truly failing, right? I think if you look back at life and, oh, I wish I had dot dot dot, like I wish I had started this company, or I wish I had pursued that dream. Like regrets, I think, are the worst thing you can have in life, and that will chase you until your deathbed. So we should really help those women, pursue their dreams, whether it's a success or not. Like just as simple as it is for men to do it. And what I wanted to say also, I think when I was like 30 years old and I started my former startup, all my friends, they were starting families and they were having baby showers and they were getting presents because they had their babies born. And I heard this quote once, and I really like the idea: is that if we have a female friend who's starting a business, we should organize a baby shower for her, but around the
Yeah.
business, and give her like a Notion subscription or a tool, that she can use to actually make this baby have a successful life and celebrate that more in society as well. So, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, that's a beautiful idea. I'll for sure mention that in the blog. Yeah, I mean, I really love that. Let's have business baby showers,
Yeah.
because the
Yeah.
men are getting those subscriptions as well in some way, shape, or form.
Exactly.
So why not the women? Um,
Yeah.
so I want to talk a bit about the more structural side of this whole funding and the
Hmm.
ecosystem. Um, So we talked about getting more female founders, getting more women to decide on the investment. So the senior VC side of it. Are there any other things that we need to change? Uh, do we need policies, education, capital quota to support getting more women women
Yeah, all of
founders
the
getting
above
funded?
is my answer. All of the above, but I think from a policy perspective, that would make such a big change because if you look at it now, all my female friends that are, let's say, freelancers or are having a startup and they are also thinking about family planning, if they need to have maternity leave, they don't have anything to rely on, right? So that is already such a big barrier. I think if we could solve this issue, like from a governmental perspective, that would be already so much better. And there are obviously like countries that are doing that much better than the Netherlands. Yeah, for example, Iceland. I think Sweden is also known for these great parental policies, but that's definitely something that is important. I know somebody who's very passionate about that. You should maybe interview her as well. Eline is her name. She has an initiative to change it more from a policy level in the Netherlands.
Hmm.
I think from an education perspective, it would be really great if we teach young girls early on what it is like to be an entrepreneur. Maybe even have them create their own little company as an assignment for school so that it becomes way less of a barrier and they learn this sort of playful mindset. And that's okay to fail because I think a lot of young girls are really afraid to fail. I really liked the book from Janneke Niese, Project Prep, that you probably
Uh-huh.
have read or have heard of, where it's a story of a girl who creates her first fashion app. I mean, it would have been great if it wasn't a fashion app, but let's take it one step at a time. Um, Getting more girls in STEM, like in technical areas, would be very, very great. And then, yeah, indeed, I think ultimately nobody wants quotas, right? Like nobody wants to get a position or get investment just because of their gender. But unfortunately, we are in a situation where like not doing it is not moving the needle enough. So I do think that those are also needed. So short answer, all of the above that you just mentioned.
Okay,
Yeah.
and would that let's look at the quota for a minute because and this is just me picking your brain, eh? Um, so would that be like moving towards 10% of any VC portfolio needs to be partially women owned business?
Um, I think
Something
ten
around
percent would be in my humble opinion, like a minimum, it's just really sad number, isn't it? Like if you think about it, it's just yeah. But if it's a quotum, then I get that you want to set the bar low because you kind of hope that it will be higher anyway. Uh, but just imagine a room with 10 guys and then just one token woman in there, like it just feels like, man, I wouldn't want to be in that room. So I think it would be so great if we wouldn't need the quotas at all. So yeah, there's no good answer for yes, 10% is what we need. It's really yeah. I wish it was just it does. I wish it doesn't matter, but it matters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I'm
that
getting
that I
emotional from
understand,
it.
but it's yeah. I was more looking like should it be part of should it be set on a portfolio level or
Hmm.
maybe on a fund level even or even on I
Yeah.
don't know. So
Yeah.
that was more my question. And the 10% to your point is really low indeed,
Yeah.
especially if you're
Yeah.
talking about mixed funds, because I think the proportion of mixed teams is now way above that 10% threshold. So it doesn't really make sense to set it this low.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, by
So
by the way, what is the threshold for Borski to start investing in diverse company? How
yeah.
many women do need to be on the cap table, or how much
Yeah.
percent of the capital needs to
We
be in
have
women's?
we have a minimum of 30% of the founder shares. So we like to have one third of the founders have shares in the company, but that is an informal rule. Formally, our rule is a minimum of 5% of the cap table, because, of course, there's also maybe past funding rounds that make the founders dilute. Sometimes we invest in companies that raise tens of millions of dollars, and then obviously, like the founders are diluted already quite a lot. But what's more important is the balance. Like, what's sad to see sometimes is if there's two or three founders and there's, let's say, one female founder, and that structurally she has less shares than her male counterpart. And we like to challenge also when we see that, like, why is it like that? Is it because the man then invested cash and she did not, she needed a salary or whatever? Like, there needs to be a good reasoning for this. And ideally, we want to see equal shares between whether it's a female or male founder.
Yeah, yeah, that I can imagine because, and quite frankly, I don't think it makes any sense to unless a person has joined like after an investment round, then maybe it
Yeah,
makes sense to give them a
yeah,
little less because there's less to be given anyway. But then
yeah,
on a founder level, if you start by giving women less off the cap table to begin with, I think you're on the wrong foot.
exactly. And also the other way around. So I also have experienced where a female founder had 98% of the founder share and her male counterpart had 2%. And I also started the dialogue there with the company. What is the story there? Why is it so imbalanced? And yeah, I think that's also a healthy discussion to have, because ideally you'd have an equal share between founders.
Yeah, true. Um, I want to move to a bit more the practicalities of female founders and female investors. So you probably hear a lot of pitches, hear a lot of stories from startup founders. What are things that resonate with you? As in, okay, this sort of lifts up my ears if I would be talking about my
Mhm.
cats. Um,
Yeah.
and what do founders often forget to mention that is important to you?
Yeah, for me, the most important thing that sticks is a good founder story. I think as humans, we are suckers for stories, and we've been storytelling ever since we were sitting behind a campfire and sharing stories with each other. And I think the why of the founder, in other words, like the product market and founder fit, is something that really sort of lifts up my ears. I can still reproduce the founder story of a company that I invested in like 8 years ago with Rubio, because I thought those were two kick-ass female founders, and that story of how they founded that company and why they both wanted to found that company together. I think it's so sticky. So I think that also helps you through all the rough patches.
Hmm.
So I think there's also this other fund in Belgium. I forgot the name, but they really believe that um, trauma makes a good founder. It sounds really
Sounds really
bad.
horrible, but yeah.
But if you have experienced some sort of real trauma or pain in life, and you really want to solve that problem for the world, that is going to make you extremely resilient as a founder to solve it. So it all links to this founder story that I'm saying. So I think um, if you're
What makes
pitching and you have
yeah?
Hmm?
No, no, no. Please continue. If
If
you're
you're
pitching,
pitching and you haven't spoken to a pitch coach, like who can help you with your storytelling, I think this is really something valuable, not just for now, but maybe also for the rest of your life, because it will make it so much more interesting to listen to, and also more sticky.
yeah. What makes a good why for you?
If something comes from the heart, so I'm a sucker for love stories.
Yeah.
So I think if somebody, like recently, they explained how their child was hit by a very rare disease, and this was kind of a game changer, because this person then started this company that helps young children with that certain disease. That is something that you're like, wow, like I really understand the pain there. And yeah, that really helps to, like I said, through the ups and the downs, to pull you through. And something I do want to mention um, is that founders also sometimes overlook the fact that there's a lot of internal politics as well, right, within funds. So it's really about not just the right idea or the right person, but it's very much about also the right time. So sometimes a fund, they are in a certain lifetime of their fund, or uh, they need to do a deal in a certain geography, or they have this personal experience where the partner of the fund just, let's say, had this own problem with their child being sick, and then recognizes themselves in this problem with founders. I would say don't get discouraged when you get a no from investors. It doesn't always link to how good your pitch is, or how good your company is, or how good you are as a founder, because there's a lot of politics around investment,
Yeah.
unfortunately, and not always the money flows to the best founder with the best idea, but it's sometimes also very much about timing and those other factors.
Yeah. How can people select the right VCs to talk to? Because I think
Mm,
you need to be in the right vertical, you need to be in the right, let's say, funding stage. Those are the sort of obvious drivers where you don't
mhm.
want to make mistakes. But how do you find out what, let's say, let's take that fund stage and the geography spread? How do you find that out? Can you ask people?
Usually it would be listed on the website of the fund, and there's a lot of lists going around of female funds investing at certain stages, and investing in certain geographies, and investing with certain mandates. So that is not, I think, super hard to find out. I think what's really hard to find out is value match. So you want to find a fund where you align on the values of what you stand for as a company and maybe as a founder, and what their fund for stands for. And that is really hard to find out. The only way you can find out is through the talks and with the by interviewing maybe some of the founders that they have already invested in as a reference call. So I definitely recommend using the power of your peer network of other, let's say, female founders or founders who have already raised funding from a certain VC and can tell you the true story. What is it like to work with this VC? Um, and then, of course, it's also quite personal. Like one partner within a VC might be totally different to another partner within a VC. So it's definitely important to test that. And sometimes it changes also a little bit over time. Definitely value alignment would be something that I would encourage you to test. For example, also fund timeline, like the vintage year is what they call it of a fund. For example, Borski Fund has a fund vintage of 2021, that's 4 years ago. So every company that we invest in now needs to work towards an exit within 5 years. And it's really important that you ask that question when you get investment from a VC, because it gives you your deadline of when am I needed to work towards an exit. And maybe I don't want to work towards an exit within 5 years. Maybe I need 10 years. Then this fund is maybe not the right fund for you, you know?
No,
So
yeah,
yeah,
and that is exactly the
those
answer that I was looking for. Do you, by the way, ask about vintage as part of the conversations that you have? Is that a question that you can just ask a VC?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, always ask it. It's not a sensitive topic for PCs. Like they can tell you if it's not already public on some sort of Crunch base or public page.
Hmm. Okay, so oh, I didn't actually know that it was also public data. Okay, but that's good to know
Yeah,
as well. Okay.
yeah.
So I want to look towards the future, both for the let's say the startup scene and Borski itself. Um, what does would success look like for you for Borski?
Hmm. Success for me would be that a gender lens fund is not a must have, but it's a nice to have
Yeah. Huh?
because women just like being in the room with each other. And now it's unfortunately very much a must have. So that would be great success. And for the broader startup scene, I would say that VCs and founders consider each other as equal partners, and that VCs are also more used to openly discussing, for example, their struggles, which is now all behind closed doors because VCs they don't transparently communicate anything about their failures externally, except that you sometimes hear that a company goes bankrupt, but you never hear a VC then talk about that. It's usually the company that communicates these kind of things. Um, and I would like for the VC community to have a bit more of a founder mindset where it's okay to learn and it's okay to fail. It's okay to share more about that because that makes us all be better and be more successful. And I think coaching can really help with that. So if you have somebody who has your back as a VC, I think you are also able to stand more in your own best self, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. How can men contribute to these goals? The men in VC.
Well, I think what you're doing is obviously quite great. So
Thank you.
more dear sons, please. Um, I think listening, not judging, is already a great first step. And recently I was on a panel, I think you were at that event as well, with Herman from Curiosity VC. And I think becoming conscious of your own unconscious bias through bias training or through indeed just asking and listening and being more perceptive is already great help. And yeah, creating a safe environment for that is also I think something that would be would be very good. So openly asking how can we do better, um, that would be already great.
Cool. Let's end it there. Anieke Lamers, thank you very much for an amazing interview. Really enjoyed this. If people want to connect with you and learn more about Borski, where would you like to send them?
They can always send me an email at anieke@borskifund.com. And there's also my LinkedIn page that you can follow. I'm very active on LinkedIn. I also have a coaching website, thevccoach.com. So feel free to check me out there.
Cool. And we'll include those links in the show notes. Um, Anieke, thank you once more. Listeners, thank you very much for listening. And until the next episode, keep being awesome. Well, that's it for episode 124 of Women Disrupting Tech with Anieke Lamers on how she closes the inequality gap by backing female founders with Borski Fund. Anieke and I hope that you found our conversation as insightful and engaging as we intended it to be. And if you have any questions for Anieke, please share them in the comments on Spotify, Apple, or YouTube. I'll make sure you'll receive an answer. When you want to connect with Anieke and learn more about Borski Fund and her new initiative, the VC Coach, please check the links in the show notes. As usual, you can find the show notes at womendisruptingtech.blog via the link in the caption. If you've enjoyed listening to this episode, please consider leaving a rating or a review on Spotify or Apple. Leaving a rating or a review helps new listeners find the podcast and supports my guests by giving them a bigger platform. And if you're a regular listener, please make sure to follow Women Disrupting Tech on Spotify, Apple, Amazon, or YouTube. Following is a simple, zero-cost way to support Anieke and my other guests in closing the funding gap by the end of 2032. For more about Women Disrupting Tech, please follow the podcast on social media. You can find it everywhere as at Women Disrupting Tech, and you can also find us on Substack. On Substack, you'll find in-depth stories and behind-the-scenes insights from each episode, plus the trends that I've spotted across 120 plus conversations. So don't forget to subscribe to Women Disrupting Tech on Substack. Finally, if you'd like to connect with me directly, please reach out via email dirkjan@womendisruptingtech.blog or connect with me on LinkedIn. Simply search for my name, Dirk-Jan Hupkes, and you'll find me. With that, I wish you a wonderful day. I hope to see you in the next episode. And until then, keep being awesome.